let's be honest, things aren't great either, are they? Between Harry and Meghan at the moment. I mean, did you see? No, of course they don't. It's a loveless, effed up marriage. And in that moment, I think Harry sort of revealed it. He did manage to deliver an entire speech and give a whole interview with Woke TV without one reference to the disastrous court case defeat this week. Watch. I mean, to say the reaction was muted would be an understatement. That is astonishing, isn't it? Because that's the moment where it's like Harry of the past would have had a laugh about that, like he's poking fun at himself and the fact that he's lost his hair, but there was radio silence in the arena. I mean, Richard Fitzwilliams, royal commentator who joins me now. So great to have you on Outspoken for the first time, Richard, obviously. An old colleague of mine, not old yourself, but as in we go back a long, long way, Richard. Seriously, where does this guy get off? Like, no, the world doesn't need advice from you, mate. Right now, all he should have been doing is getting up on stage and showing some sense of contrition. And I don't know about you, but I saw absolutely none of that in that appearance. Don't miss a single update on the stories that actually matter. I'm breaking down the news every day, so make sure you subscribe to never miss a beat. Click that subscribe button right now. Go.
I have never seen much contrition from the Sussexes. I don't think they fully understand or appreciate what the word means. Look at Meghan, for example. I mean, she's the most trolled person in the world, we hear. And, of course, the lies they spread about the royal family, for example, and famously on Oprah, then, of course, in the Netflix series, and, of course, Harry's memoir Spare was a bizarre feat. But they're not into contrition. What they tend to believe, we've just heard it. I mean, obviously, we know Invictus is a remarkable organization. We know it does a great deal for wounded veterans, and there's little doubt about that. I mean, 10 years was celebrated in a service at St. Paul's. But the problem is the foundations, as I see it, the foundations on which they built their brand are crumbling away.
And it does feel, Richard, in that climate, pretty despicable to use the children. So Harry, Meghan's Spare, for example, posting, when all else fails, pull out the kids. Although they won't be seen by anyone, of course, but the noise is what matters. The noise will camouflage Harry's recent disaster. And I actually think that's true, Richard, because if you look at the mainstream media coverage this morning, so here's The Sun, Meghan a move. It's that whole idea, isn't it? If you're desperately trying to change the subject, Richard, about something that you don't want people to talk about, give them something else. And it feels like Harry and Meghan are sort of serving up the children, because what I don't understand, Richard, is that if they genuinely believed that the United Kingdom was so unsafe, so unsafe for them just a few years ago that they would be putting their lives at risk to come into the country, then I'm sorry, Richard, what's changed? Well, I'll tell you what's changed. A thumping courtroom defeat where they desperately need people to stop talking about one story and move on to the will they, won't they meet the king. And I'm sorry, I do believe they're using the children, and I don't think they should be using their own children. Do you?
Well, I certainly don't think they should be, but I think this has been coming for some time, and I see the Sussexes' plan in three parts. I mean, first is, as you know, I mean, we don't see the faces of the children often. They're, as it were, somewhat hidden, which is in itself rather odd, but of course that's up to them. But the first part in this was, I thought, an impertinence. For example, to go to Australia on this faux royal tour, which Meghan, of course, was using for commercial purposes. I mean, we know that. But what we also see, because the Prince and Princess of Wales were last in Australia, in 2014, it's probably their turn to go. And it was, I think, completely wrong, since Australia is a realm. But that was the first stage. What they were aiming for was this, without the publicity that they got. Harry knew perfectly well he wouldn't get security, but nonetheless they used it as a form of emotional blackmail, as I see it, because first we had this unbelievably humorous saga about whether or not he was to stay in a royal accommodation. That turned out to be Buckingham Palace, and it turned out also the palace didn't want, given that the court case would probably, and Harry expected a victory possibly, I'm sure he did, and so he could have given a speech from the steps of the court, or if he'd wished, and then of course the optics of him going back to Buckingham Palace with the king being head of the judiciary would not have been good. But also we had not only security and not only accommodation, but also Meghan, I mean, they released, Harry and Meghan actually had their team release the schedule. The schedule's been torn up, but you're right about what happens next, because we're not about to see Meghan and the children. But what is probable, I suspect, since the king, as you say, wants to see his grandchildren, that there will be a meeting of some sort. But that we must qualify that. It's absolutely essential, and I think that the royal family absorbed this. William wouldn't have anything to do with it, I'm certain. But I think it's absolutely essential. Firstly, no photographs, no recording, anything that, I mean, when he saw King Charles after he had heard he had cancer, he was on Good Morning America the next time. Well, literally a short while afterwards, when he recently, last September, saw King Charles for 15 minutes, I think it was, and he was in Ukraine, with fair enough, linked to Invictus. What does he do? He gives an interview to The Guardian. So anything about linked to the media must clearly not happen. I do think the king wants to see his grandchildren. I think he probably will. If I had to bet, and I should think Althorp with the visit pilgrimage to Diana's grave, that I can understand. That will be, as it were, also, I suspect, on the agenda. But this whole thing has been a complete farce, really, because you've had publicity which they couldn't have expected, and a judgment which he certainly couldn't and will have to pay or partly pay for. Of course, there were 7 claimants.
Now, I just want to talk about the choreography, Richard, in terms of how a meeting with King Charles could work this weekend. I am told there's no way that Queen Camilla wants to be part of this, and that there's no way that Prince William will be part of this. But what's interesting is that Chris Shipp, and you know, Richard, you would never be this unkind, but I call Chris Shipp's organisation woke ITV, because these days they literally just seem to be the mouthpiece for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. But what makes it quite interesting, Richard, is you know that this information is coming directly from Harry and Meghan, so it shows you what they're thinking, which is why it's quite important to discuss.
An absolute slip of the tongue has just confirmed the dark, devastating reality behind closed doors in Montecito. Giving an awkward interview live on woke ITV, Prince Harry accidentally admitted to Alison Hammond that Meghan Markle isn't actually proud of him, completely exposing what insiders are now calling a loveless, toxic dynamic. But the desperation runs even deeper. Left completely shattered by a humiliating multi-million-pound courtroom wipeout, Harry and Meghan are actively weaponizing their own children, Archie and Lilibet, as human PR shields to force their way into Highgrove, all while plotting a secret commercial exploitation of Princess Diana's grave. The grand illusion of the unified Sussex front has just completely shattered in front of global television cameras. Following his crushing legal defeat against the Daily Mail, Prince Harry was expected to show a shred of contrition. Instead, he took to the stage to deliver a tone-deaf lecture on national resilience, while his hand-picked Invictus Games crowd met his presence with absolute, deafening silence. To truly understand the sheer panic inside the Sussex camp right now, you have to look closely at the stunning choreography of Harry's latest media blitz. During a heavily managed appearance with ITV's Alison Hammond, the presenter threw what should have been an easy softball question, saying, "Your kids and Meghan must be so proud of you, do they tell you every day?" Harry's immediate response was a telling, defensive stumble. "They tell me every day that they're proud of me. No, they don't." On air, it looked like a failed attempt at humor, but behind the scenes, commentators are pointing out that the mask slipped entirely. It was a raw, accidental admission that the public adulation he craves does not exist within the walls of his own home. Rather than addressing the fact that Mr. Justice Nicklin completely threw out his legal crusade and exposed him as a witness lacking all credibility, Harry tried to pivot back to his old, cheeky chappy persona, only for his self-deprecating jokes about going bald to be met with dead silence from an audience that has completely grown weary of his endless entitlement. But the true crisis isn't just a failed joke, it's the calculated orchestration of what royal insiders are calling pure emotional blackmail. As the public realization grows that Harry has lost £50 million in a reckless legal war, the Sussex PR machine immediately shifted into crisis management mode, leaking massive headlines that Meghan Markle is suddenly flying into the UK with Archie and Lilibet. The timing is so transparent it's almost laughable. For years, the Duke and Duchess insisted the United Kingdom was far too dangerous for their family to ever set foot in without state-funded security. Yet the exact second Harry suffers a thumping courtroom defeat, those safety concerns miraculously vanish. As royal experts note, when all else fails, you pull out the kids. By flooding the media with a high-stakes, will they, won't they meeting with King Charles, Harry is desperately trying to manipulate the news cycle, serving up the identities of his children to camouflage his total reputational ruin. But the frantic rush to secure a meeting at Highgrove isn't the only chess move Harry is making this weekend. In just a moment, we are going to expose the hidden commercial motive behind Harry's sudden family pilgrimage to Princess Diana's grave at Althorp, and the fierce, uncompromising stand Queen Camilla is taking to protect the king. Let's break down the strategic layout of the absolute civil war currently paralyzing the royal households over this proposed Highgrove meeting. According to exclusive media briefings coming directly from Harry's camp to woke networks like ITV, the Duke is frantically trying to arrange a 90-minute trip from Birmingham to see the king. However, the level of mutual distrust between both sides is at an all-time high. Courtiers at Buckingham Palace are deeply suspicious of Harry's true motives, and with incredibly good reason.
When Chris Shipp posted last night that the Duchess of Sussex will not be attending any public-facing engagements, Kate Mancy, the assistant editor of The Times, added, "Let's see," with the suggestion, of course, that there is going to be some type of public-facing encounter, potentially with the king, although, they all say, actually, all of that will remain behind closed doors. But this is the reporting on the Woke ITV website that I want to get into with you because it's quite interesting stuff, Richard, and it is new developments. So Shipp reports that ITV News understands last-minute discussions have been taking place in the last few days over a meeting between Prince Harry and his father, King Charles. They're trying to find a mutually convenient time and location for the father and son to see each other, but staff in both camps are suspicious of the other's motives. The latest arrangements centre on Harry travelling 90 minutes from Birmingham to meet the king at his Highgrove estate in Gloucestershire. Harry is trying to work out a way for his family to travel there too, as he is keen for his two children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, to see their grandfather. The last time King Charles saw his two California-based grandchildren was in the summer of 2022, meaning they have never met him as king. However, there is some briefing taking place on both sides about the willingness of the other side to meet, or to find a time which works for the king and Harry. If any such reunion were to take place, it would happen away from the cameras, and Meghan does not wish the children to be photographed, as the couple have sought to protect the identities of Archie and Lilibet. I have to pause at that point, Richard, and just say, what planet are we on? Chris Shipp, all the time she's posting the identities of those children. So, sorry, I just had to say that because it's just a complete and utter fact check. It's just not true. But he goes on. ITV News also understands, and this is really significant, Richard, that Prince Harry is planning to stay with his uncle, Lord Spencer, on his Althorp estate near Northampton. It is where Harry's mother, Princess Diana, is buried on an island in the middle of a lake. Harry and Meghan plan to take Archie and Lilibet to see their paternal grandmother's grave. The Spencer family reunion on Friday and Saturday will include all of Diana's siblings, Charles Spencer, Lady Jane Fellows, and Lady Sarah McCorkindale. If King Charles is at his Highgrove estate this weekend, it is unlikely Queen Camilla will also be there. Surprise, surprise, after the negative comments Harry made about her in his book Spare. The Queen does have a family home in Wiltshire where she does often stay at the weekend. So what is quite clear, Richard, is that, she's going to pop off, isn't she, to Wiltshire and say, I'm having nothing to do with this. But very interesting, because what Chris Shipp doesn't mention is the motivation behind the Althorp visit, which I think is to film for this documentary, which they've got planned for Princess Diana's 30th death anniversary next year. But also, Richard, what I found so interesting is the fact that the front of Prince Harry's team to brief to Chris Shipp that they still distrust Buckingham Palace. It's they really can never just shut up, can they? If they want this meeting to happen, stop attacking the king.
It would be wise, but then we saw over the accommodation that both teams were light years apart, and there can't be any love lost either. And in Spare, of course, Harry said, well, it was a sort of hate fest against several courtiers who, of course, wouldn't appreciate it. The one exception is interesting, potentially Jamie Lowther Pinkerton, who was the private secretary who was very close to both princes, but years ago, for 8 years, and he's always been there's always been the possibility that he might perhaps play a mediator between Harry and William, but I simply can't see that. With reference to Queen Camilla, the dangerous one, to quote Harry, the way he rubbished her in some of the interviews around Spare will not have been forgotten. But I do think that the king, keen though he is to see his grandchildren, will be fully aware, will be very, very wary. We've only just seen it with the accommodation and with the security, and then, of course, the court case. And of course, Charlotte Griffith's articles and revealing the fact that Harry told absolute lies.
Yes, and she was here earlier this week, and I do encourage everyone to go and watch that full interview, because obviously she does explain, and Richard, I believe, and I know she took a lot of flack and I questioned her, but I do believe that what she said in court was completely legitimate, and the judge agrees.
The judge did agree. In fact, the complainants got absolutely nowhere. But I think with reference to this meeting, the Sussexes have a vested interest as well, certainly commercially. They're not, he's not very bright, she's not very talented, so what have they got? They got the royal links. Now, this is the ultimate meeting with the king and also introducing the king, of course, to a future generation. You can understand that. It's... Archie and Lily, it's not their fault whether when William ascends the throne their titles will remain is quite another matter, but then that's for the future. On this occasion, the courtiers, absolutely clear that they don't trust the motivations of the Sussexes. But once having leaked the fact, and it's bound to leak, as you know, from US Weekly to a whole variety of sources, the Sussexes ensure various thoughts get out. The one that deeply touched me, and I'm sure that deeply touched you, was the idea that after they'd met the king, they'd have, for example, a half-in, half-out situation outside Britain. How about that, for example?
The last time Harry secured a brief face-to-face with his father, he immediately hopped on an American morning show to brag about it for commercial clout. Palace staff know that any private conversation with the Sussexes is highly likely to be leaked to U.S. tabloids within 48 hours. The king may desperately want to see his grandchildren, but the institutional risk of letting Harry back into the inner sanctum is far too high, leaving the royal family in a state of hypervigilance. The emotional boundary lines within the family have officially been drawn in permanent ink, and Queen Camilla is leading the charge. Reports confirm that as Harry scrambles to bring his family to Highgrove, Queen Camilla has made her position entirely clear. She is fleeing straight to her private family home in Wiltshire, refusing to spend a single second in the same room as the man who publicly branded her a dangerous villain in his memoir Spare. Prince William is standing in total solidarity with her, completely cutting off all communication and refusing to allow Harry anywhere near the future line of succession. Harry is left facing the brutal reality of his actions. He thought he could destroy his family's reputations in books and Netflix series and still demand royal accommodation at Buckingham Palace. Instead, he has been met with a cold, ironclad rejection, forced to look outside the royal estate just to find a place to lay his head. This total exclusion from the royal fold has driven Harry straight into the arms of his maternal family, leading to a highly significant weekend stay at the Althorp estate with his uncle, Lord Spencer. On the surface, the media is framing this as a deeply emotional family reunion, with Harry taking Archie and Lilibet to visit the island grave of Princess Diana. But royal insiders are exposing a far more cynical undercurrent. Next year marks the monumental 30th anniversary of Princess Diana's tragic passing, and Harry is currently under massive pressure to deliver high-yield content for his multi-million-dollar Netflix contracts. By bringing his American children to his mother's resting place alongside Diana's surviving siblings, Harry isn't just grieving, he is actively scouting locations and capturing the exact narrative arc required to keep the Sussex commercial machine alive in Hollywood. It is a desperate exploitation of royal history by a couple who has completely run out of original talent. This brings us to the ultimate endgame for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Their entire brand equity relies exclusively on their remaining links to the British Crown, yet those links are systematically being severed. While Harry is reduced to playing out a transparent public relations performance on biased media networks, the true working royals are moving forward with absolute clarity. The public has seen right through the manipulation, voting Harry to the absolute top of the ranks as one of the most disliked figures in the country. He is caught in a terrifying trap of his own making, operating a loveless commercial partnership in Montecito, entirely distrusted by the palace in London, and forced to use his own mother's legacy just to remain relevant on the global stage. The mask has slipped, the courtroom receipts are devastating, and Prince Harry's accidental live television admission has exposed the tragic reality of his current life. But now, I want to hear from you. Do you agree with Dan Wootton that Harry and Meghan are committing the ultimate act of desperation by weaponizing Archie and Lilibet, or do you think Queen Camilla is 100% right to refuse to see Harry after the damage he's caused? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. I'm jumping in right now to read your replies. Make sure to smash that like button if you found this breakdown insightful, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a breaking royal update.